Hey, welcome to Pardon My Disruption. I am Alan Berkson. I am the Director of Community Outreach for Freshworks, and I'm joined as always by the Dr. Disruptive, Jonathan Yarmis. Welcome, Doctor.
Good afternoon, good evening, Alan.
We are blazing new territory with new technology today, but it was important enough that we get on and say something. So we can't say that we're broadcasting from beautiful downtown anywhere. It's snowing by me. How about you?
I'm not that far away from you, snowing here too.
All right. Well, so today we want to talk about net neutrality, and my daughter texted me today saying, "Can you explain to me again what net neutrality means? Because my friends want to know." And I think that she probably falls into the same category as a lot of people. Most people probably can't even spell neutrality. I tried to type neutrality into Twitter, and it came up with a bunch of odd spellings. But maybe why don't we start off by talking about what it is, or what it means, and then we can talk about what are the ramifications of the decisions and maybe some of the rationale for why they did that.
It's actually one of those rare examples of non-doublespeak from Washington. You know, that, as the name implies, network neutrality. And the idea is, regardless of the source of the traffic, that internet service providers treat the traffic the same way as anything. So it is neutral as to the source of the traffic. So whether it's our broadcast, whether it's somebody blogging from their iPhone
and internet providers are Verizon, Comcast, Time Warner, AT&T, T-Mobile, right?
Cablevision, anybody who carries internet traffic. The internet is not a monolithic network, but rather a stitched together group of a variety of networks controlled by different operators utilizing a single standard called TCP/IP. If you've heard that acronym before, IP stands for Internet Protocol. So we all speak the same language. We all share these interconnect points. There's a big backbone of the network that's owned and operated by the government, but it actually connects a whole bunch of smaller networks together so that we can all share traffic. And the idea of net neutrality is, regardless of where that traffic comes from, whether it's the largest consumer of traffic on the internet, Netflix, or whether it's you and me, it's not like Netflix, until now, got any favorable treatment. Their traffic was treated the same way as ours.
So it wasn't Netflix, but Netflix is probably the poster child for one of the challenges with net neutrality, right?
Well, yes. So let's talk about first what happened, what this ruling is, and then what it means for various people. So the ruling is, since the Obama administration, net neutrality was enshrined into code. That the FCC, Federal Communications Commission, had these net neutrality rules. Before that, the internet was kind of the Wild West, and people were starting to think, okay, what are things we can do? What are things we can't do? Actually, I'm going to stop a second, Alan. I don't know if you hear it. It strikes me that your breathing is being picked up by the microphone.
I don't know.
Yes.
All right.
Oh, you can tell, even the highest production values of Pardon My Disruption. But the whole idea with net neutrality, why it became into play, was that the internet had thrived, and there was a sense that the telecommunications carriers might start messing around with things. And we saw evidence of this. While there were occasional denials, it's clear that there were certain telecommunications carriers, Verizon notably, who was slowing down Netflix traffic. So that if you were trying to watch a movie at home from Netflix and you were getting all these buffering issues, some of that may be the inherent nature of the internet, some of that may be because Verizon was slowing it down. And to forestall this control over the network, the Obama administration put in place the net neutrality guidelines that said all traffic must be treated equally. You cannot penalize anybody. You can't create internet fast lanes and the like. And so we've operated under the last 6 to 8 years with that as the guiding principle. Now, there are those who argued this was unnecessary in that competition would create its own inherent barriers to people trying to do that. And why was this legislation necessary? There. On the other hand, and this is the gist of the argument, is by abandoning net neutrality, it creates an incredible power in the hands of the telecommunications company to do things that benefit it and not us.
Right. So let's talk about the rationale for the telecom companies for wanting to do it. And one analogy I gave to my daughter was, imagine that we set up a grocery store that we all paid into, and then we all took out as much food as we needed. But what if one person decided that they were going to take out way more food, and it became an imbalance? That could create a challenge for us as a community, because we've got somebody who's taking more and impacting the rest of us, because maybe we get less food that day, or overall we get less food, or we have a tougher time getting food. And that's kind of like a Netflix, right? Where they're coming in. I mean, who's paying for that fact that, we know video takes up more bandwidth, and I can't remember the stat. Was it 60% or 70%? I mean, at points, Netflix
somewhere around this time at night, in the next couple of hours, Netflix will be over half of the bandwidth, over half of the traffic on the internet.
On the
just
internet.
Staggering to me.
On the internet. And so as a telecom, I'd say, well, that's I only have one pipe to serve, and I want to serve all my customers. So it's not fair. Is it fair that maybe Netflix is not acting in a fair way for the rest of my customer base, right? Maybe you want to add to that in terms of other rationale that telcos might have for wanting to maybe have more control over the bandwidth priorities.
Yeah, there are a couple of other rationales, and let's put them out there before shooting them down. One of them is, in the current state of affairs, what's their incentive to improve the infrastructure? That it's great that Netflix is making a lot of money, but why should I, as Verizon, invest more money when I'm not getting any more to make the Netflix experience better? So that there was reduced incentive for the telcos and carriers to invest in extending the infrastructure. And as the internet moves forward, we are going to need more bandwidth and more capability. And it eliminated or reduced their incentive for doing it. Right. Secondly, on a practical measure, that maybe there are people who are willing to pay for a fast lane because they need it, whereas some people, why should I subsidize everybody else when I don't need high speed? And Netflix is willing to pay for that.
If all I do is email all day, I don't care about my bandwidth.
Uses nothing.
Right.
It's the same reason why it used to be we paid for long distance phone calls. Now we don't pay for long distance because the bandwidth that consumes is so infinitesimal. They can give us unlimited phone calls. It sounds like a feature, and we're not making a dent in their network capacity.
Right.
So if we've got different needs and different requirements, why should we all have to pay the same for capabilities that you need badly and I don't need at all? Can't we let those people who are willing to pay for superior service pay for superior service?
Right.
Now, when it comes down to, though, that to me is an incomplete justification for what just happened. Because Netflix is the elephant in the room here. That says they more than anybody have figured out how to exploit loopholes because of net neutrality to build a tremendous business on the back of others. And what we've done potentially is punish 152,687 businesses because of the shrewd business judgment on the part of one.
Netflix figured out a loophole or figured out a way to game the system to a certain extent.
Yeah, and to me, when you've got such a boundary case, we've all, to your kids at school, when one person misbehaves and everybody's got to stay after school or something like that.
That happens, right?
Yeah, because it's easier for the school to do it. We're treating everybody equally, and there are lots of instances where one person has gamed the system and we punish everybody because of that one person, instead of figuring out a solution that goes to that one person and said, look, I know you were operating under the rules the way they were written. You've done something that's fundamentally unfair, and you've either got to come to some kind of fair agreement, or we're going to figure out a way to kill your business. And at some level, that was going on with Netflix prior to this, recognizing the fact that they really did have a fundamentally good deal going on and made so much money. They could, in fact, start to pay people for, their somewhat of their share of the burden to eliminate the need for the draconian solution. So I think we had a situation that said that benefit was no longer in need of being addressed. We had solved that problem already, and eliminating net neutrality doesn't add anything to the equation, but punishes some other people, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, and rewards a few.
Right. So let's talk about punishment and reward.
So reward, or do you want to start with punishment?
Let's start with reward, because I think that's what most people are thinking about right now.
Yeah. I haven't followed the stock price of Verizon and AT&T and all of the other carriers who were liberated by this ruling. I imagine some of it's been factored into their stock price for a while, so it's not like this net neutrality repeal was a surprise. It's something that's been on the radar screen. In the day Ajit Pai, a name who shall go down in infamy, was ratified as commissioner of the FCC, we knew this day was coming.
Right.
And at the risk of making a political statement, I'll make one. What he's done, the way he's handled this, has been truly abhorrent. Where he's made mocking videos, where he has ignored the fact that millions of supportive comments around net neutrality have been identified as being planted by the Russians, and that individuals making their own comments had many of them rejected, not considered by the FCC because they were deemed as being duplicative of other comments. It's like, we already heard the comment. So they ignored the fact that millions of citizens took the time to write, and you were all writing the same thing. So we heard it once. The fact that we heard it 2 million times, no big deal.
Right. So
the carriers get rewarded.
And the carriers now have an option to do something which actually other countries have done. So now they have the ability to charge you for different services, as opposed to just saying, here's an open pipe, you can use it any way you want. I can say, you want to use Twitter, Netflix, and email, here's your package. Oh, wait, you want to add Hulu or YouTube to that? There's another package. Or you want to add others, and they could pretty much decide what access any individual of their customers can have access to.
And not only that, bundled and charged for things, but as you yourself have experienced, they can deny access to things. If they don't like, the Daily Stormer and saying you shouldn't be exposed to that violent material, they can say that. Or they can say, we're not happy with our economic agreement with Bloomberg, and So if you go to Bloomberg.com, not only can they say, here's what it costs incremental to go to this premium site, they can say, sorry, we won't take you there. And some of these things, sound extreme. Would they really do that? I mean,
right.
Who are among the most hated companies in the world before they had this freedom?
Right.
Yeah. Whose business models,
if you had to ask which company do you think has your best interests at heart, I don't believe that telecoms would fall in the top of that list.
Right. As a matter of fact, who would be lower? Maybe lawyers and politicians.
So let me ask you to put on your Dr. Disruptive hat, because with every action there's an opportunity. I believe that to a certain extent, the telcos could be setting themselves up for disruption. Because when you create a bottleneck, someone else would want to go figure out a way to go around that bottleneck. What are some of if you were an entrepreneur right now, what would you be thinking? I was already thinking I need to start launching satellites to start my own internet service.
Yeah, but therein lies the problem. And one of the reasons why these have been regulated monopolies for so long, because the cost of capital investment to create a competitive network is massive.
I don't know. Isn't that changing in terms of being able to tie together Wi-Fi's and networks and create
But no is the short answer. I mean, can you do certain things? But somewhere along the way,
in the next 5 years, if this stays at least the next.
I still think you're talking about massive capital investment and significant technical challenges to do that without the redundancy and throughput and all of those things of the internet. Duplicating the infrastructure we've got at some point.
So is there an opportunity
to compete with them? I don't think so. I think the opportunity to compete with them occurs in 2018 and 2020 and 2022. That they've got such control over these pipes.
You mean it's got to be legislative?
Yes.
It's got to be a legislative overturn. So, that's the thing. It's one thing to say I'm going to disrupt you by giving your customers something different to do, but when the infrastructure costs, when the cost to get into the business, what's the word?
Barriers to entry.
The barriers to entry for the business are so high. That's where we expect to be protected by legislation, because otherwise we can be,
and
internet. Look,
my
daughter sends me a text message. Does this mean we don't have free speech anymore? I'm nervous. Are you, and
but if
that's
you think,
not necessarily an exaggeration, but because it's a possibility. But obviously, there's more factors involved.
Yeah, and some people may argue that AT&T and Verizon competing with each other will keep themselves in check. And I don't believe that for a moment. It's not like one of them is going to go, net neutrality really was a good idea and consumers will favor us and let's go in that direction. That they've been waiting for this moment. There have been examples of terms and conditions that have been changed leading up to this day. Marketing campaigns were already in place. They've been waiting for this. So rather than one saying, hey, I can, out neutral them, they're going to, fight to see who can be more onerous, is my belief in the short term.
Right. So we got to wrap it up here, but a quick call to action is basically you've got to talk to your legislatures. You've got to take there has to be some sort of a regulatory change, and keeping a close eye on your providers. And
there is a legal challenge being mounted. I believe there are about 15 states attorneys general who are preparing a lawsuit that says the overturn of net neutrality is illegal. So the courts may be our savior.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us for this pocket version of Pardon My Disruption, and we'll get back to you soon and with more disruptive talk. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, Alan. Open up your wallets, everybody.